one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Entertain a motion for the approval of our regular agenda tonight, please.
I would so move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the regular agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed. Thank you. And I'd also like to entertain a motion on the approval of the consent agenda.
I will also so move.
And a second.
Second.
Good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Thank you, gentlemen. Go directly to our staff agenda items. First up is City Engineer Brad Reevestack. Brad has some more updates for us and I think some additional information to talk to us about on the improvements for the 2019 street improvement project. Brad, I'll turn it over to you and then we'll talk about that or get that public hearing going. So let's see what you got for us first, okay?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple quick points on the public hearing tonight. Just so everybody is aware that this public improvement hearing is really just for the council to gather more information about the improvements and to make an informed decision about whether or not to order the improvements. Now, ordering the improvements does not mean that we're going to be bidding the project. It doesn't mean that we are going to be awarding a project to a contractor. It doesn't mean we're going to be assessing the project, right? It's just a matter of defining the scope of the work so that the engineer can prepare the plans and specs for the project. So that's all we're doing tonight is ordering the improvement. Now, the scope of work can be decided by council, whether it's one street, two streets, 5 streets, all the streets, whatever the council decides to move forward with. So that's the one point, or first point that I wanted to make. The second point is just to talk about the survey cards a little bit. The survey cards, again, they're not legally binding. They're not anything scientific to the card. It was just a way for us to gather more information for the council to make an informed decision about the roadway improvement project. So, you know, I don't want people to feel like signing the card meant they waive their right to an assessment hearing or they waive their rights to anything other than just giving their opinion so that the council had some good information to make a good decision. So that was the only purpose of the card. The only authority I know that can approve a project is the city council. So it doesn't matter if it's, you know, 50% of the residents, 75% of the residents, 1%. It doesn't really matter. The ultimate authority is with the council to make that decision. So with that said, I'll give you the results of the survey. We had a few cards come in late. But for the responses that we received 89 responses. 48 were responding yes, and 41 responded no. I'm assuming those numbers, from what I show here on this survey, I think Kim had left some of these in the back room if some of you folks want to take it, but it's roughly about 55% responded yes and 45% responded no. I could go through each street if you wanted me to. On the responses, but ultimately we had 147 total mailings for the survey, and 48% roughly did not respond to the survey. So again, I can go through each street real quickly here. Grenleff, it was six yes and 0 no. Gennaro Court was 5 yes, 1 no. Justin Trail was 4 yes, 17 no. Joliet was 8 yes and 5 no. Jody Avenue Court was 2 yes and 4 no. Jody Avenue North was 4 yes and 2 no. 101st Street North was 3 yes and 3 no. 103rd Street North and Court was 12 yes and 4 no. Kelman Court was 2 yes and 4 no. And Juneau was 2 yes and 1 no. So those are the numbers that we got from the survey. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor, to open up the public hearing if you
Well,
decide.
and let me talk a little bit about the cards that we sent out. We were trying to take the temperature of folks that weren't here. This building holds so many people, and a lot of people weren't engaged. Normally, the people that are here are the most engaged that we have in our community, by far, the people that we have here. We wanted to reach out to those people that perhaps weren't quite as engaged and see if we could get their opinion. And I think we did that here. I'm a little disappointed that 52% of the folks we sent a card out to got back to us, roughly 52%. I was hoping for something higher than that. But it does give us a flavor of each individual street's temperature on this. Whether or not those folks show up here and talk to us or not, this is, for me, valuable information. Anyone else have any comments on what Brad has just said or this card survey before we open up the public hearing? Gentlemen? Okay, real good then. I need a motion to open the public hearing, please.
Also move.
Very good. I've got a first. Do I have a second to open the hearing?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of opening the public hearing for the 2019 street improvement project, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And no. Very good. All right. I'd ask you to come on up and take 2 minutes if you would. We've heard a lot on this to this point. So new, if you can, give us some new information if you have new information. I think with the cards and what we heard last time from residents, I know that I have a pretty good feel myself for which neighborhoods and which streets are probably wanting this improvement and which just kind of want to back off at this point. I think I have a pretty good feel for that, and I'll bet that some of the council does too. But at this point, let's go ahead and open that public hearing. Again, please come on up. Just give us your name, take 2 minutes, and tell us what's on your mind. Kim?
Mr. Mayor, council
Yep.
members, can you please ask that people do sign in?
Oh, thank you, Kim. Yeah, I didn't realize you had your sign-in sheet there. If you could sign in as the clerk has requested, that's great, because then we know who's been up to talk with us. So feel free, first up. No reason to raise hands, just step on up.
I am Cheryl Cargill. I live at 6782 Jocelyn, and I am presently about 50% underwater for my property. Jocelyn Road is completely underwater. We have road closed. I don't,
Okay.
that didn't come to 68th and Jocelyn
No,
at all?
this is
Okay.
not your neighborhood.
Okay, gotcha, sorry.
Yeah, this is a completely
Okay.
different situation. We're actually talking about a road improvement project, paving roads. Your situation
Oh.
is what I had talked about a little bit earlier when Danielle, I forget her last name, came up.
Okay.
You're the Sunnybrook area, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is what we're going to be discussing a little bit later in our
sorry.
agenda. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, we're going to discuss it a little bit later in our agenda. Mr. Berglund is here from the
Gotcha.
county. So he'll be talking to us about that as well. So, I appreciate that, but we're gonna get to that just a bit later.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
So again, the 2019 Street Improvement Project on Grenelift, Gennaro, Justin, Joliet, Jody, 101st, 103rd, Kelman, Juneau. So who would like to speak on that? This is surprising. No one's coming up to talk to us right now. I thought that we would hear some more feedback on this project. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Tony Vazzuni, 9790 Gennaro Court.
Sign in for us, please.
I will.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say that I've been to a couple of these meetings, and I think we can all agree the roads need fixing. And we might not like the price tag or the process, but that's what we have to fix it. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and approve getting the roads fixed. And keeping in mind, I live on a side inlet, and it doesn't help me to just fix my little road because I have to get to my house. So it'd be beneficial from a cost standpoint. I believe that you get some economy of scale. If you fix enough roads, we all get a little bit of a savings in that. And then I also want to appreciate for all those that maybe the cost in the budget might be a challenge. I know this might be later down towards the assessment thing, but I believe you guys have it in your purview to maybe look at maybe a longer term on how we pay it back. So instead of 10 years, maybe 15 or 20, we can look at that to maybe help defray those costs so we don't actually have to pay it earlier. We can settle up when we sell our house. So I haven't heard any comments like that, but I think that might be a way to help ease some of those cost concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I saw someone else over there who almost got up, I thought. All right.
Yeah, Bob Brandt. I live next to Tony on Gennaro.
If you could sign
9800.
this for us,
Yeah.
please. The clerk's making me do that. I normally don't do that. The clerk's making me.
Make her the best.
She's tough, yeah, she's a tough one.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Tony said. It looked like the counts for Justin Trail North were very much against. And if you have to drive on that street to get to 96 from we live on Gennaro Court, it does a little good to pave our road if you gotta, go through a broken road to get to 96. So maybe when you decide hopefully so that it makes sense for an end user. Why pay 12 grand for a road if you have to change your tire when you go through that other road? So anyway, do it smart if you do it.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Linzer, 10317 Jody Avenue North. I was just wondering what the process, one of the problems is that Joliet is going to be necessary to do at a higher level because of all the traffic. As I understand it, would probably be advisable. Well, one of the things and I don't really want to do this, but other municipalities have vacated through roads. What would be the process of just vacating the other end of Joliet so that the access would either be from up at, 110th? And I know you can't cut off people's access to their houses, but when that road was platted, there were not roads through where Mr. Soderstrom and some people live. There's that road that goes through that you can go over to Jamaica. So it's a possibility, and I think it should be thought about if it ends up we can't afford to do it. Think about that as a cost-saving measure. I'm not exactly in favor of it. I like to go up to the restaurant up there once in a while myself, and it would be less convenient, but I don't think it's an absolute inconvenience. And there's a number of roads, even in White Bear, that used to be through roads that have been closed off, so I know it can be done.
Thank you, ma'am. Just one moment, please. Next, please. Anyone else? Anything you want to tell us? Now's the time, please, sir.
Sorry.
Some 60-some years ago, I grew up on a road that was hell on wheels. Oh, sorry.
Of course.
Jim Drost, 8682 Jamaica Avenue. Anyway, if your roads aren't in decent condition, a brand new car can turn old in very short order.
Thank you, sir. Good enough. Anyone else?
Hello, Erin Donovan, 9840 Justin Trail. So I live on Justin Trail, so the gentlemen that we're talking about, their cul-de-sac, needing access to their cul-de-sac from Justin Trail. My question, I guess, is there's another cul-de-sac that's attached to Justin Trail that my understanding is not part of this assessment. So those folks would then be benefiting from the fix on Justin Trail, but not paying for any of it. I thought at one point they were included. I could be mistaken on that, but I guess overall, I guess it's interesting to me that one side of the road for the cul-de-sac is being assessed, but the other side is not. So I don't quite understand why that is being presented that way. The other thing, just to reiterate, and I've said this before, is that when the feasibility study discussion was presented to us at Victoria Station, it was under the assumption that 75% of the people on the road had to vote or agree yes to have the assessment. And it doesn't seem that that policy is being followed, which I think it should, because that's what led us to agree to do the feasibility study.
Thank you. I'll make one more call. Please.
At Beskar, 9255 96th Street. So 96th Street.
Sorry, sir, what was your name? I didn't
Pat Beskar.
Pat, thanks, Pat.
And so I'm on 96th Street, which is the one area she's talking about, and we've got the simple resurface that they did on it. But the estimate of the $1.7 million included resurfacing and grinding down that whole area. So I'm not sure I'm understanding how many of the roads that were originally assessed for the $1.7 million got a simple fix, and when would we see the updated costs for the roads that would just be in scope now that some of those have been fixed, and when will those new costs come out, and when would we basically get an understanding?
Yeah, so maybe to answer both of the questions, 96th Street, I think it's Court east of Justin Trail, and 110th Street actually was part of the original area that we, or was included with the pavement improvement project. We went back out and met with those folks on 110th and 96th Street, east of Justin Trail, and they decided they didn't want to petition the city and move forward with the project. They would rather just do a seal coat. So we just did the seal coat for that stretch of street on 96th and 110th. So once they decided they didn't want to be a part of the greater feasibility report, we ended up taking them out of the project. So that's how that came about.
So when would we see the revised costs?
So the revised costs are they're in the feasibility report. The costs that are in the feasibility report, they don't include 96th Street east of Justin Trail, or they do not include 110th Street.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anyone? Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and shut it down. We have some questions to answer here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and assume and call an end to our public hearing and ask for a motion to close our public hearing, please.
Also move.
And a second.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of closing the public hearing on the 2019 street improvement project signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Very good. Brad, do you have any comments on, let me understand what just occurred there, and I have not delved into this and have not heard from Mr. Beskar earlier. So if I understand this correctly, 96th, when the question was put to them, do you want to do a petition to have this road done, or do you choose not to do a petition to have this road done?
That's correct. We posed the question to them before we went to the feasibility report.
Okay.
And had a neighborhood meeting, met on site with several of the residents, and they decided they did not want to sign a petition or move forward with the feasibility report.
They did a seal coat instead.
Yep, so then
Okay.
they got their
Yep.
regular routine maintenance that was
Gotcha.
scheduled.
And that's where I'm going with the regular routine maintenance dollars here in a second. I'm gonna cover that. Kim?
Mayor and council members, just for clarification, what we do as a staff is we set up those neighborhood meetings prior to when the seal coat dollars are available.
Yep. Makes good sense, Kim, and that was where I was going. I know that's what happened, and I wanted people to hear that. Because the dollars that the city is putting toward this project are not just pulled out of a general fund. These dollars are actually the improvement dollars that were slated for your street. We've got a street improvement project, and it ranks all of our streets, and it tells us when we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, seal coat, crack filling, these types of things. So these things are done before, or I should say, these petitions are asked for and proposed before these dollars are spent on your individual roads as they're slated for your roads, because we have a choice to make at that point. We can take those dollars and put them toward a reconstruction, or we can say, no, I think I'm gonna put a petition together, and I think we'll use those those dollars for maintenance, and we'll put it toward a reconstruction, because our road at this point needs to be done, as some of these gentlemen have said here tonight. So that's carefully crafted in order to do that. You don't have to go one way or the other. This is bottom-up leadership. You are telling us what you want to get done. We do not send out postcards, as some cities do, and say, you are getting your road done. That's not how it works here. You tell us when your road gets done. And that's the way we like it. You should be telling us what to do as much as possible, I think. Beskar. I'm just going to throw this out there, and anyone comment when you have something here. Mrs. Lindsay came up and talked about Joliet at a higher level of build type. Doesn't have to be, and perhaps limit access to the north, even though going to Sal's is fun. I agree. It's a good place. I like to do that too. But, Joliet right now, Brad, and you can jump in here. I don't think it's even built to 7 tons right now, is it? You've got about this much on it?
Well, pavement-wise, it's probably only 2.5 inches, but the base is probably 5, and so, no, it's not. I mean, it's maybe 5 ton, right?
Maybe a 5 ton. So if we improved it to a 7 ton, which is what the remainder of the project is going to be, and Joliet has actually lasted a long time, I mean, that would be my druthers. That would be my preferred option, is not to improve it over and above the others, even though it takes every bit of heavy truck traffic that goes into those neighborhoods to the north. It just does. Your streets take the truck traffic when the truck goes to your house to drop off the cement or the dirt or the whatever. Joliet takes every last one of them, which is why it looks the way it does. But scaling that back to a 7-ton road would be very feasible, and I think in terms of, let's just call it equity. I don't like fair, we'll say equity. Maybe it makes more sense to do that. Just my 2 cents there. All right, I've had my say. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Giefer for a minute and see if he has any comments, questions on what we just heard.
I don't really have any other specific comments or questions at this time.
Okay, real good. Denny.
I'll give just a little bit of maybe perspective more than anything else. And this is really only my own. You hear the word fair an awful lot. We would all like to see our roads be handled 100% fair. That's pretty difficult to do because over the years in Grant, we have so many different scenarios. And this is what drives where we go and what we do. We have some gravel roads. We have some paved roads. We have people living on county roads. We have people living on state roads. We have some people who have 350 feet of frontage. We have others who have 850 feet of frontage. We have some, including some of those in the room here, who have paid their roads, paid for paving their roads 100%. Some cases many years ago. While I think fair is a great word, I think probably the best we can expect is something that is reasonable. So whether this is reasonable or not is up to each and every one of us. It looks to me like, studying all the information here, it's about every 30 years that we as citizens of Grant would get assessed for a $10,000 to $12,000 bill. I'm not suggesting that that's chump change. It's not. It's serious money. But if you divide 10 or 12 grand by 30 years, it's between $25 and $30 a month. I understand that there's no interest in there. Nobody is today starting to put 25 bucks or 30 bucks a month away to do this. But at the end of the day, we will each have to answer the question, is it worth that to us to enjoy what we do living in the city of Grant? And that's only perspective.
All right, thank
Thank
you,
you
Danny.
for listening.
No, I appreciate that. It makes sense, and I have a couple of more words to say on the subject myself. Mr. Carr?
Well, I intend to ramble on for a while, so I would ask for a little attitude on that, Mr. Mayor. How much time we got? No. Well, first of all, I'm glad we sent out the postcards, because the way I read our road ordinance, per the ordinance, we are required to do that. So we did. So I'm glad that went out. So we have some good response. Some people haven't responded. Roads. Always a hot topic in Grant. Never enough money. There's a census coming up. Does everybody know about that? Could get $250,000. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Because if we get this kind of response, we're not going to get any money. So we really need to get that done. So I just thought I'd mention that. So I guess the real thing in Grant, and what we've talked this to death, is that people want their roads done. But when we've had road meetings, and Steve Bonin had some for a while there, they thought, let's raise the taxes, $100,000, $200,000. But when we had those meetings, then nobody wanted to do that either. We've got kind of a unique situation in Grant where the residents are responsible and they have say. It's not always the same when you're in a city where they just tell you what you're going to do and you're assessed and that's it and good luck. We have some chance out here to actually be part of the process, which is pretty amazing considering the modern day, especially Minnesota. So we all go to county and state highways. That's how we get out of here. We like to come home and we like to be not bothered and just leave me alone. But on the way in, we all take major county roads. We take state highways. We take state roads, 96, Jamica. We've done some horse trading with the county on which roads we would take, which road they would take to try to limit our exposure on what kind of maintenance we're going to have on those roads. They've taken over some of the heavier feeders. That's really helped. The people that live on the state and county highways, they pay tax dollars to Grant for maintenance on their roads. And just so we're all clear, if you pay $5,000 in real estate taxes, about 10% of that goes to Grant. Of that, that's $500. Half of that goes to the fine police and fire and everybody else that gets. So that's about $250 left over. So we're lucky if out of $5,000 you're paying, you're getting $125 for road maintenance, grading, pothole patching, seal coating. That's what we pay. People on state and county highways, they don't get that because they're on a state or county highway. So that money then is given to other people on gravel roads and in city streets. The reason I say this scenario is I've also heard people say, well, we're getting all this money. Well, we don't. And that's why your taxes are really cheap compared to a lot of other communities around. They are. So then we come off of those roads. Then we decide, and we have a choice per road policy, how you want your roads feeding your own house taken care of. Okay? If I had my say, I would say the major arteries of the city that the city controls should be the first ones paved. I've heard some talk about not giving a little extra pavement to Joliet, but that's a major artery. And that's where everybody gets out. I can't say I'm happy about turning my front yard into the Audubon, and I'm getting somehow a deal on that. It doesn't make any sense to me, because I would just as soon, in the old school ways of Grant, when Mr. Wiehlander sat up here, keep it bumpy, it'll slow him down. That's what they did. I remember doing 5 or 50 down Jamica, maybe 60. That's probably 60, just in my Pontiac, just to keep the tires from falling off. So now we have a choice. Now, when we first did this project, it was all done in one lump sum years ago. It's prudent to do that. It's cheaper for everybody. Makes sense. The people living on some far back cul-de-sac do get the enjoyment of going down Joliet as a nicely paved street. We're all in this together. The question is, do we do it or don't we do it? Okay? My answer to this over the years is I don't care. I really don't, because I don't care what my road looks like. I have no invested interest in that. Can you assess, is it worth that much to your house? That's your opinion. assessments are arbitrary and capricious when it comes to assessors trying to prove your value. It's really almost impossible to do. So I don't care. What I care about is what everybody in Grant wants to do with our road policy. I also care about getting that gas tax money a lot, because as soon as we get that, we are changing our road policy, I can guarantee you, if I'm sitting up here. And there's going to be a lot of changes, and we'll use that money to fix the roads in Grant. But at this time, we do not have that money. All the citizens in Grant also contribute, because back in the day, some roads were not getting paved or any kind of seal coating or any maintenance. We all decided as a council, did a really good decision, nice way to work through it. We said, look, we're gonna seal coat your road every 7, right, Brad? 7 years, you're on the list. And if you don't wanna seal coat it, we'll give you some pothole patching, we'll give you some other stuff, and we'll let you pave your road, and we'll chip in that money from the city. And we do. This is your choice. Or you can wait another 7 years and wait around, and we'll do it for you then. We don't care. We're maintaining the roads as best we can with what we got. All the information I've ever seen, we don't want to raise our taxes to everybody, which I think is unfair, if you want to use the fair word, and I think Danny laid that out really well. There is no such thing as fair. So we can just kind of throw that one out the door. So, you know, right now, based on what I'm seeing, I'm not seeing enough support to even do this. So, you know, we don't have to. We'll just continue doing what we're doing. The roads are not going to crumble into dust. We can maintain them. Sometimes it's not as cost effective as we'd like, but that's our job. And we find clever ways. The Klein brothers were brought up. They do a great work. They've been a savings to us and a godsend in a lot of ways to keep our roads as best we can. So that's my say. I mean, if the people want to do it, great. We don't have a money tree. I don't really feel like raising everybody's taxes. The same people that are saying they can't afford the road costs are not going to be able to afford increase in taxes either. Either way, they're getting stuck. And all the people that are on state and county highways and not real happy that traffic's doing 60 miles an hour past their front door are not going to be happy about that either, because they get no cost benefit from that raise in taxes. And their values aren't, they're worth less because they're on a county or state highway. I mean, not a lot, but some. So that's what I have. I mean, I think the participation, this is great. It's our first really big project, and it was a large one. And I think it was a learning experience for everybody, and I appreciate everybody contributing, and I think all the public support. And I think sometimes just getting all this word out there gets the word out to people how it works in Grant. And hopefully we can maybe do some of these roads. You know, if people want, they certainly have that choice, and then we'll just see where it goes after that. But as always, you know, it's based on a road policy that we worked on. It's up to people to decide. And another note is on the 50%, we did pass something that was like over 50%, but I agree it should have stayed. I didn't vote for it, but I think 75 is more of an even number for me. So it shows that there's enough approval if people want to pave their street without feeling like they're getting forced to. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Tom. The history lesson is good. I think people need to know that. Let's talk about a couple of things you said there. First of all, you know what? I want to respond because I forgot to do this after our public hearing ended. There was a gentleman up here, I think he was the first gentleman up here by the name of Tony, if that's correct. And Tony had talked about perhaps stretching out that payback on the bonding for the roads that do end up getting done. And I would certainly be in favor of that. I don't think that 15 years is unreasonable. And, you know, again, Brad, when Brad comes in here, Brad is a good engineer in that Brad tells us this is the absolute top this cost is going to be. He's smiling over here, you guys can't see him. I can almost guarantee you $12,000 is pie in the sky. It's not going to be $12,000. Okay, it's going to be significantly less than that. How much is significant? I'm not sure yet, but I don't know that Brad knows how we run Grant. It is not going to be $12,000. You can stop smiling now, Brad. I see you over there doing that. So it's not going to be that. The 51% that we talked about, Tom does not agree with that. That's fine. We are not up here to agree with one another. That 51%, and the reason that I voted for that, is a very specific tool. It's a very specific tool. If we have small cul-de-sacs like we do have, the two we just talked about on Justin, those small cul-de-sacs, you get, perhaps that road is just coming apart, and the residents do a petition, there's only 6 residents on that particular cul-de-sac, and 2 of them are retiring or have other life changes where they're like, forget it, I don't want to put a dime into this road, I don't care how bad it is, I'm not putting a dime into this road, for whatever reason. There's only 6 of them, okay? At that point, the council retains the power to go ahead and order a project like that. In fact, that 51% it's nice to have it there, but if you actually read our road policy, the very last line in our road policy, like most of the policies we have in this city, says right at the end, the council may decide to implement any project that we think is in the interest of the citizens of Grant. 1%, 50%, 80%, we can order the project. That's within our purview. That's why we're up here, to make these types of hard decisions. Are they always popular? No, but when those types of situations come up, we need to be able to effect those projects because they're important sometimes, not all the time, sometimes. So I touched on the 15-year payback. I would be in favor of that. Obviously, it's not something we're deciding tonight. As we move forward, I would certainly look at that. Brad, I'm going to take a drink of water, but I want to ask you a question first. I'm looking at a sort of a breakdown from the feasibility report in terms of support levels right now. Okay, and I want to ask you a question. I'm looking at Gennaro, I'm looking at Justin Trail, includes 96, and then I'm looking at Grenelef Avenue at 61%.
Are you talking about the original petitions?
I am, yeah. And then I'm looking at Grenelef right now where we've got 6 responding yes, so 40% up there. Do we have more information on Grenelef that they either, I mean, they're pretty close here. Do we have information on whether or not we have overwhelming support up there? Is Grenelef sort of on the fence, or what's going on with that?
Well, you know, like, we can only use the information that we have at hand, right? We got the original petition, and we had 60% of the folks not respond to the survey, so we can only use the information at hand.
No, I agree. Danny?
Brad, I'm looking at the info, the petition. This was from Thursday, October 10th, though, which shows Gennaro Court at 90%, Justin Trail at 71%, and Grenelef at 61%. Did Grenelef change somewhere in terms of support? I mean,
You know, I have not heard anybody, you know, from Grenelef that has changed their mind from the petition to the survey. I can only imagine that, you know, the survey card was an inconvenience and they decided not to respond.
That's fine, thanks.
You know, you know, maybe some folks felt like the petition was to get the feasibility report going versus, you know, actually ordering the improvement.
Yep.
So there could be a disconnect there, right?
Okay. Jeff, did you have?
No, I was just going to clarify what he just said, that the distinction between the feasibility report and the
at the beginning.
actual approval or disapproval.
Yeah, okay. So we're sitting here looking at these, and I'm going to read all the way down through these so people know what we're looking at and what I'm discussing with the council here. This is the original petitions and frankly the cards with a 52% response rate. Yeah, that doesn't really enlighten me any more than what I've already got, where people were more engaged. It's a step. I'm not sure that it's even necessary, but didn't really tell me much. So anyway, what I'm looking at from the original petition and the feasibility report, Gennaro Court, 90%. Justin Trail includes 96th, 71%. Grenelef, or for those of you who prefer, Greenleaf, 61%. Joliet Avenue, 24%. Woodlawn Acres, 49%. So, from my perspective, those people have made me aware, at least the last two, Joliet and Woodlawn, there's no question in my mind what I've learned there. What I've learned there is that folks aren't ready to support this. I'm not sure if they're waiting for taxes to be raised. I'm not sure if they're waiting for gas taxes to come in. Maybe the legislature will actually get our gas taxes back at some point. I doubt it. Until we hit 5,000, we're not getting the gas taxes that every other community gets. Okay? Hopefully we hit 5,000, as Tom smartly brought up again. The census is coming up. I hope everyone answers that truthfully and with every living soul in your home so we can get to 5,000. So that's where we sit, gentlemen. I don't have much more to say on this. It looks to me like the residents have made their wishes known, and they are willing to move forward with this on a couple of these. That's my view, but I'm looking for input.
Well, no, go ahead.
I have one question on 103rd. It looks like there was 12 respondents, yes, 4 no. What, Brad, you remember the breakdown of the size of the 103rd?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What's the scope of the work for the 103rd Street?
Court North.
You know, I want to say 100, and I don't have the map in front of me, but I think 103rd kind of goes through, all the way through the Woodland Acres area there. From Justin Trail
Yeah, but
up
see,
to the
what he's
cul-de-sac.
done is he's breaking, excuse me for a moment, what he's done is he's taken the streets, all of the streets within Woodland, and he's put them together as Woodland Acres, because
So
Woodland,
there's no opportunity to chunk up Woodland?
to split them up. Yeah, you'd end up driving over and damaging half the roads to get in there and do 103rd with the heavy equipment. I'm not sure that at 49% overall, we want to be jumping into a community like that. That's my perspective. Could be completely different from yours. Danny?
No, I have to say, on my perspective, I hate to not see those where there is strong support not moved forward, but there's no way that I'd support now doing Joliet or Woodland Acres at all. For my part, I would support moving forward on Gennaro, Justin, include 96 and Grenland. That's it.
Yeah. Tom, any thoughts?
We'll
wrap it up here.
Maybe Gennaro, but looking at these numbers, if you wanted to do Justin, you've got 90.6% that either is no or hasn't responded, and 9.4% that said yes. I don't think that's a mandate.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we do that one. And then Gennaro, I mean, if you add up the no's and the did not responds, I mean, that's 55.6%. That one makes sense, but the other ones, I don't see any of the other ones being viable, and yeah, that's only, yeah,
Well, when we look at the original petitions, which are going to be a more honest representation of this, other than a card that's sent to your home that I, darn near threw out with my junk mail, it's going to be a more honest representation. Will you keep it down just a little bit when we're talking up here, please? That's a more honest representation of what we're seeing, is that people who were involved in the process and moving forward, other than cards, like I say, I almost threw out in my own junk mail. Let's get this wrapped up, I guess, gentlemen, if we're ready to go. Dave, do you have anything to input here before I get going?
I do not.
Okay. Staff, Brad, any of the other staff? Okay.
I do not.
If you guys have ideas on how to proceed, I am all ears. Jeff, Denny, Tom.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I don't think a card sent off to, the democratic process to go after, per our road policy, to see what people thought afterwards, and to not give that as much weight, I don't understand that.
Okay.
That I just don't. I don't really care what the survey said before.
Okay.
People have to go through the process. It's a process, and they have a chance to either A, change their mind, either way, or decide, they don't know and they don't want to put something on their neighbors. I have to look at this as this is the information we have.
Okay, what particular road are you talking about, Tom?
Well,
so
just
that we're
about
all-
any of them except for Gennaro. Gennaro here looks like the only one that shows support. If Justin showed support before, they don't now. I mean, I'm just looking. I'm adding the no's and did not responds. And if apathy is what we have, then I'm not voting to tax people just
Okay.
off of this.
Well, your vote can certainly
Yeah,
can
that's
certainly reflect your views on the validity of the postcard versus the validity of the original surveys and signatures personally gathered. So you
Prior
can
to
certainly
the-
do that.
Prior to the
Yep.
Yep.
Mayor, if I may.
Yep.
Just remember that, the decision that comes out of this public hearing is to order the improvement, right? It doesn't mean that the project, there are several points from this point through the process that the council could decide the project just doesn't move forward, right? If a lot of the residents that did not respond, or not responding because they don't know the price, the actual price, you could order the improvements for all of the streets if you want, or one of the streets. We could go through the entire special assessment process up to the point where we're receiving bids from the contractors. That way we would have really good prices. We would know what the price would be and what the assessments are going to be. And you could, again, maybe I hate to suggest it, but we could do another survey, right? Or whatever. I'm just trying to throw out ideas there that, just because you're ordering the improvement tonight doesn't mean the project is being awarded and is going to be assessed.
Well, that's exactly right, which is why I brought up the 15-year payback that the gentleman had brought up, because people need to have that information sort of to grind
Mayor,
those numbers
the
through.
attorney has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I can wait. Okay.
Okay. That's why I brought up the 15-year payback, so people can kind of grind those numbers in their head and go, oh, well, maybe this does make sense at a 15-year payback. Also, as I mentioned before, this is not going to come in at $12,000. I find that hard to believe. It'll come in significantly lower than that. So that's going to change things. And keep in mind, what we're doing here, again, as Brad said, is we're ordering him to go out and start this process. Up until we actually award the contract and get it done, I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to turn to our attorney for his comments.
Just for council's information and for those assembled, I just want to revisit what sort of garden variety assessment project looks like. Typically, it's either triggered by a petition or on council's own initiative. Council, when presented with the need or the interest in an assessment or road improvement project, then orders a feasibility study, and then issues a notice to all the folks that are affected and has a public hearing on it. Much of the things that, or much of the steps, many of the steps that have been taken here in terms of mailings to property owners, additional public hearings, all these other things are not necessarily typical. You might say that they're an exercise in, I don't know, raw democracy that doesn't normally happen in this type of process. And so when the engineer indicates that there could be additional inquiries to the public or requests for additional public hearings and so forth, that's obviously council's choice. It's not one that most councils generally make. Of course, a lot of councils don't go as far as has been gone here with the per to address mailings and all the rest of it. It is simply an initial public hearing on the matter, a review of the feasibility report, and so there's been sort of a belt and suspenders approach to testing public interest and desire on this front. Whether or not you choose to continue down that path will be a decision for the council to make, but this has been sort of a customized process. I just make that note, and it doesn't resemble what occurs in most cities. That's not a criticism, it's just an observation of the fact that the council, I think, has taken pains to solicit public input.
Yes, Denny.
Yeah, I think between what Tom has said and what Dave has said, the issue here is we try and give as much public input and control, authority, if you will. Getting a read on this, to Tom's point, is tough. At the end of the day, what Mr. Snyder is saying is we're sitting up here charged with a responsibility to ensure that these roads don't get to the point where they're dangerous. Or we're trying to stay on top of this, spending as few pennies as we can to accomplish that. So you're still going to have to do something, I think.
Which is exactly what the 51% means nothing, for all intents and purposes. We can raise our hands right now and order the entire thing. What we are doing is trying to get as much from you folks as we can. And as David said, this is quite the custom process. But I will say, moving forward, once we get done with 2 public hearings and a mailing, I won't entertain any more of this, at least from my perspective. I don't have that power. The council votes on that stuff. But from my perspective, I won't be voting for any more of it. I know what I need to know to move forward on this stuff. I've driven these roads. I know what needs to happen here. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for any motions. If gentlemen have thoughts in your head in terms of approving part, all, or some of this, I am willing to entertain those right now.
Well, then I'll start.
Okay.
I would still move forward with just Gennaro, Justin, and Grenilev, just on the next step.
How about 96th? Would you include 96 on that Justin Trail?
I would.
Okay, so your motion is Gennaro Court, Justin Trail includes 96, and Grenilev Greenleaf.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
You'll second that? Okay, very good then. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jeff? Are you aye?
Aye.
Okay, and those against?
Second
No.
All right, real good. Passes. The other two are back where they started. Brad, unless there's more information on that, as far as I know, those other two projects there are back where they started. Keeping in mind that the road survey, the engineering survey that was done by Brad and WSB is good for 3 years. So this effort can be reconstituted. This effort can take place once again on those roads that were not included.
Feasibility
Good
report.
point.
Yes, they can be reconstituted quickly. If your neighbors say, hey, how come this one didn't get done? That's what you need to do. So we are done with that one, as I understand it. Do you understand what we voted for there, Brad?
Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. I think we're going to move on then to our public hearing with Jennifer, our public hearing with Jennifer Haskamp. We'll take a 3-minute break here and let people clean out if you don't want to wait for that one. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you this evening, we have a request for a variance from the wetland setbacks to install a replacement septic system. We've seen several of these over the last couple of years, so it's pretty typical in terms of, we know we've got a little bit of an issue with our setback requirements, particularly on these small lots. The property that we are discussing this evening is located at 6764 Manning Avenue North. The owner is making the request, or I should say the applicant is making the request on behalf of the owner who's trying to sell the home on behalf of his mother. When they went to sell the property, they found out that the existing septic system is non-compliant and is required to be updated and a new one installed to meet Washington County standards. So the property is approximately at 1.5 acres, just under that, and as a result, obviously finding adequate space for a septic system and a secondary or a new system is incredibly difficult, as well as the fact that there is an existing wetland on the property. So when you combine those two things together, we're left with very little space in which a new septic system can be located. I'm going to direct your attention to page 3 because I know you're all familiar with the review criteria with respect to the variances, and especially when we're looking at the septic systems, since we've looked at these several times. The variance that we're looking for in this case is from the wetland setback. Our ordinance requires a 75-foot setback from the wetland edge. The proposed is approximately at 50 feet. So as a result, we're looking at approximately a 25-foot variance. As I noted in the staff report, a wetland delineation has not been done on the property. So to know exactly where that edge is, we don't know, but we know it's approximately 25 feet plus or minus as a result. We also have a condition within our ordinance with respect to grading within the buffer area. It's unknown whether or not they will actually encroach in it, so I included it because obviously we know that there has to be some construction in order to install the new system. As a result, they might encroach within that wetland buffer as well. So I estimated it based on where the new location of the septic system is and the wetland that we're looking at, maybe approximately 10 feet that they would encroach into that buffer area as well. The no-grade buffer, excuse me. So the property, the home was built in the 1950s. As a result, this predates the ordinance going into effect. As a result, the lot size, the setbacks, all of those different elements or dimensional standards that we look at with respect to the zoning ordinance, obviously they were compliant at the time the lot was created, but they are no longer compliant. As a result, we are in front of you this evening with the variance. The Browns Creek Watershed District has been contacted. Ms. Kill responded and stated that we're not looking at a change in use, therefore there are no additional requirements from the watershed district unless they disturb a certain amount of cubic yards, and then they'll need the grading permit, which is pretty typical. So staff has prepared some draft findings and conditions for you, which are found on page 4. They are also included in the resolution of approval draft that is before you this evening for your consideration as well. That is a very quick and dirty summary of what's being requested. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that. As we talked about, for those residents here not for this application, we had a goal-setting session and talked about what Jennifer is describing here is the unfortunate fact that the city of Grant has a longer, more stringent setback for our septics than the county does. It's an unfortunate holdover from times past. It is not the doing of this council, but in our goal-setting session, Jennifer smartly brought that up, and we will be working to change that. However, for these unfortunate folks that are here before us tonight, they are going to require a variance in order to do this. Obviously, without doing this, the home would be uninhabitable. It looks like it's been approved in terms of its use, design, and everything else from the appropriate authorities, whether it be the watershed or the county in this case. I think that's a fair characterization. These, to me, have become one of the most sort of no-brainer things to do, because once those authorities sign off on something like this, what expertise do we have other than to follow their recommendations? Saying that, gentlemen, questions for our planner? I will entertain motions if that's where you wish to go.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I
sorry.
will remind you this is a public hearing.
Oh, pardon me. You know what? I look at these things and I forget they're public hearings. We do them so fast normally. We just zip right through them. Can I get a motion?
to open for
Public hearing. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second. Very good. All those in favor of a public hearing? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is open. Anyone who would like to discuss the 2019-20 variance request for septic 6764 Manning Avenue North. Please step up, identify yourself, and tell us what you're thinking. 1, 2, 3. We are looking for a motion to close the
Motion to
public
close.
hearing. Do I have a second? Second to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. All those in favor of closing, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. I will entertain
I would move to
motions. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Jeff's got a second on that one. All those in favor of approving the variance request for the septic, 6764 Manning Avenue North, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Jennifer. Our city attorney has no action items. We're going to move right into new business. Kim, do you want to talk about our first item?
Mr. Mayor and council members, before you are the October city council meeting minutes, where they're normally on the consent agenda. They are not, because council member Carr needs to abstain.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I would so move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving these minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
And I'll be abstaining.
Opposed and abstains. Thank you. Well, we move right into new business B. It is my sad duty this evening to consider a resolution, 2019-21, which is accepting a resignation and declaring a vacancy at this table. That is a sad duty that I am not happy to report to the public and to the audience. Mr. Kopp has notified us that he will be having a life change and he will not be with us any longer. So, Danny, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you might have a couple of words for us.
Thank you. I do at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this will be my last council meeting. I am resigning. We've sold our home. We're moving. It's time to downsize. I will miss an awful lot in Grant. I will miss all of you, and I will always care about you and about that which goes on in Grant. It has been my honor to serve, and I thank you very much for the opportunity. If you choose to appoint, I would hope that you look toward the Planning Commission for your next seat. They have the expertise and the knowledge and the experience to help guide our city. And I thank you again.
Thank you very much, Danny. I will, there you go. I will second that. I came from the Planning Commission. That's where I started in the city years and years back. Denny did as well. Jeff, I think you were on the Planning Commission as well, were you not? Yep. Yeah, so it's where you kind of get to learn the rules and you kind of get to learn what's going on and you kind of get to learn the ordinances. So we're going to need a first and a second on this resolution 2019-21.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Very good. And a second.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this resignation and declaring a vacancy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. Denny, I think you abstain in this case.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Trails.
Happy trails. I've got something for Denny. It's a very, very expensive plaque.
Is that real gold leaf?
It is. It's
Oh,
gold.
wow.
It's gold.
Gold
I think
color.
it cost us $39.
Oh, well.
Fantastic piece of work for a fantastic guy. Sir, you deserve that. You went through a lot with us. We appreciated you stepping up when you did, and you saved us. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wonderful having this guy up here, and I tell you what, if you ever get to know him, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your entire life.
Oh, shucks.
It's true. Yeah, he won't like me saying that, but
He lives out of town. I don't
He's
care.
one really nice guy. Yeah, but he don't live here anymore, so
It won't
forget
matter
it.
anymore.
We could talk bad
Heck
about
with
him.
him.
And those who didn't like my vote a little bit ago, it won't matter anymore.
Oh, yeah, he's gone. Okay, unfinished business, we have none. Staff updates, anyone? Kim?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I will just remind everyone that the Truth and Taxation hearing is December 3rd at 6 p.m. prior to your regular council meeting.
Thank you very much. And that's when our residents can come on up and talk to us about their taxes. And that's actually usually a pretty quiet meeting because no one's really worried about their taxes in this town because they're so low. They're just worried when we come to those unfortunate occurrences where the roads have to be done.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
I have a
Tom,
question.
go ahead.
That ill-fated, what is it, what the meetings we have to go to so that we can sit through those
Well-
taxation, is that still going on? Do we have to go to that class?
The truth in taxation class?
Yeah, is that
You
gone
know,
now, or?
I believe that,
It's gone. You're out of that for 2 years.
yeah,
We are,
we're
okay.
gone for 2
So-
years. The
so-
county's handling it.
All right, so do we have to start up again, or no? We'll just let the county handle it from now on?
That's for the other. Yeah, it is for the other meeting.
Yeah, that's for the,
No, I understand that, but do we have to get going on that? Because last time we missed the deadline, that's all I'm saying.
At this point, we do not.
Okay, I just was curious. This came to, okay, thanks.
and from my perspective, I think that's a much better use of everyone's time. The county is trained in it,
Yeah.
and why not have them do it? That's why they're there. City council reports, feature agenda items. Was there any other staff updates? Nothing else? Mr. Tufty, did you have something to add to the, I'm gonna need you to come on up here. I'm sorry? That's next, yeah. Yeah, that's next, yep. Yep, so, city council reports, future agenda items. There is no action taken here, but we've got a couple of residents here, and Mr. Doug Berglund, from Washington County Sheriff's Emergency Management, I hope I have that correct, sir, is here to answer questions. First, I want to talk a little bit about the situations, what's happened there, both in the past and lately, and what's occurring there now. As most of our residents know, Sunnybrook has an unfortunate history of flooding, and with this year's weather, it's gotten even worse. We did raise roads, if I'm not mistaken, Brad, that was about 2 years ago, and then put in guardrails around those roads. Unfortunately, one of them, Jocelyn Road North, is now underwater and closed. That water stream is so bad there, and again, as many of you know, we're dealing with a landlocked basin. There is no natural outlet for that basin. That water is going to pile up there. It doesn't get to the St. Croix, it doesn't get to the Mississippi, it's stuck. So we've got some problems there. We did raise the roads, we put in guardrails to try to guarantee access to these neighborhoods. That has, at least in one case, failed. We still have access to the neighborhoods, they just have to kind of go around the long way. But let's talk for a second just about responsibilities so that we all have sort of the 10,000 foot level here. Responsibilities of our different state agencies, our different local agencies, our watershed districts. The watershed district in this case is Valley Branch Watershed District. Valley Branch has the power within their charter and the charge within their charter to take care of and manage all floodwaters within the Valley Branch Watershed District. So the city, say for example, if we wanted to go down there and plug a culvert or build something to direct the water or move the water in any way, that would not be within our power. That would be an illegal operation by the city to do that. Valley Branch Watershed District is responsible for those types of actions. The county emergency management has been very helpful to this point, and their responsibility, and I'm sure Mr. Berglund's going to talk about this a little bit more, so I'm going to give you a little bit there. They plan for emergency responses in order to get, well, for lack of a better way to put it, emergencies handled. And whether or not this rises to the level of emergency, we're going to let Mr. Berglund talk about that in a few minutes, and what his responsibilities are in the county and how they see those, as well as I think he may have some information for us from both the state level and the federal level, which is kind of outside my purview right now. In terms of recent actions, we did have a meeting at the city office. It's going on about a week and a half ago now with Mr. Berglund and many other officials, including our county commissioner, Mr. Fran Myron. The DNR, Valley Branch Watershed District, was there, and we did develop some action plans moving forward. The county was tasked with doing some engineering to see whether or not these roads can be further raised in order to guarantee access to some of these neighborhoods that are in jeopardy of losing access. So the county has completed that. That came back to me on Saturday when I attended a meeting at the county offices up on Myron up there, and got that plan back. But for me as a non-engineer, it's really not actionable intelligence as it is right now. It's not actionable. I have forwarded it to both Valley Branch Watershed District, Mr. Riefsteck, our engineer here, as well as the engineer, John Hansen, who is the primary engineer at the Valley Branch Watershed District, so that we can say to them, the questions are very simple. If we do this with this road, according to this project, how do we impact both the water flows coming in and the downflow effects? We all know water seeks its own level. If it's blocked here, it will go higher over there. We all know this. So what we do here, we need to make sure that the watershed district blesses, if you will, so that we're not creating problems for someone else down the road. Pretty simple. So we're waiting for answers on that. We don't know what we can do as a council, as a city, to guarantee that yet. Obviously, we're looking for cost-effective methods that are going to guarantee access. We're going to be able to get emergency vehicles in there, and the residents are going to be able to access their homes. Obviously, that's what we're here to do, to put into place action plans like that. And once we have more information back on that, then this council can have a very substantial discussion on those plans with the feedback from those professionals. Right now, acting as engineers wouldn't do any of us any good because we don't know what we can do and what's legal for us to do. So, Mr. Berglund, if you would step up and just give us the 10,000-foot view and what your duties are and what you've been working on, what you're doing.
Certainly. Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and council members, as stated, my name is Doug Berglund. I'm the county emergency manager. I work for the sheriff's office. And you're absolutely right. In the last couple of weeks, we've been working with all the stakeholders here surrounding the Sunnybrook neighborhood to try and plan properly, if possible, what we can plan for in the event that the flooding continues and gets worse. And both short-term preparations is what strategies can we put into place now, and what strategies do we need to be aware of and plan for next spring. So from a county perspective, let me back up. From an emergency management perspective, we plan on the principle that every disaster is a local disaster. So in the case of Sunnybrook, for planning purposes, it begins with the city of Grant. And only once the city of Grant's resources are exhausted do they reach out to the county and say, we need assistance with this disaster. Once the county's resources are exhausted or beyond capacity for whatever piece of response that is, we will look to the state. Same goes for the state. State would turn to FEMA. So with that, our authority only goes so far in terms of what we can ask for or what we can dictate. We just try to plan accordingly with the city and the public safety folks that are going to respond there. So that said, there's been a lot of questions about access to the neighborhood. I have yet to talk with some of the stakeholders here recently since that road has flooded, specifically fire. Unfortunately, Public Works isn't here to talk about the septic systems or the wells, and I don't think Valley Branch Watershed is here. So I'll try not to speak on behalf of those other stakeholders. But I can tell you in terms of the access, from a 10,000-foot level, the approach is if residents can get out, we're going to assume that law enforcement and squad vehicles can get in. Now that can be circumvented by residents, of course. If a resident were to, for example, park their car at a neighbor's house and walk around or bike around or whatever means they may take to get to their car and then leave, access to their houses is not obtainable. We wouldn't know that unless that resident tells us that, right? So then, in a case of an emergency call, we would only find out then that we don't have access to that. So I believe the lines of communication are open right now, and I'm not too concerned about that. We have made tentative plans, began discussions. If that situation happens where residents are going to stay, but access to that neighborhood is not obtainable by vehicle, we can entertain thoughts of responding to those areas by boat. And of course, we'd have to stage a boat somewhere, and we want to stage it as close an area as possible to diminish the response time as much as possible. So some of the opportunities here would be the Washington County North Shop, the Matamidi Fire Station, Stillwater Fire Station. The key thing to that is clearly public safety response to that area is going to be extremely delayed. Now, in terms of fire response there, I can't speak to that. You're going to have to, speak directly to the fire chief about what the plan is for that, and mutual aid companies that can come in from different directions on first call and things like that. But right now, that is our plan. If we need to arrange some sort of watercraft that we will deploy with boat pilots and get law enforcement to that area. So hopefully that answers some questions about the planning that's being done in terms of ingress and egress. In terms of what does the response look like to individual homeowners in the case of a disaster or an emergency. Unfortunately, those answers aren't good in terms of reimbursement. The Individual Assistance Program by FEMA has very high standards and thresholds for qualification. In the public infrastructure, for example, if roads are destroyed, that threshold for Washington County is $914,000 of uninsured infrastructure. So countywide, in the case of flooding issues, it doesn't take that much for us to reach that level in terms of shoulders of roads and culverts and things like that, maybe some city buildings that are near water levels that get washed out. Parks and areas and things like that that are destroyed by moving water and currents. It doesn't take us long to get to that threshold. The individual assistance threshold is much different, and it's also included statewide. So I'm not aware of any disasters recently that have reached that level of individual assistance. And in the interest of managing expectations, that individual assistance that is applied from time to time in areas of disaster is nowhere near enough to make an individual whole in terms of their houses lost. So one of the things that we can only do is provide communication and resources to programs that in some cases may be of assistance. One of those is through the Homeland Security Grant Mitigation Program for home buyout. The issue with that is it's a 75-25% cost share. So the applicant, which could be the city, it could be the watershed district, it could be the homeowner, that applicant has to come up with 25%. The Sunnybrook area is a good neighborhood in terms of that program. There would be a high level of interest from the state to move forward with those projects. But again, you have to have that 25% cost share. That 25% could be split amongst any number of entities. It just can't be a federal entity. So, we have these programs in place, but they're not necessarily designed to assist with individual homeowners. So those are the things that we're struggling with in terms of, should there, and this is something that we're looking at throughout the entire county in preparation, due diligence preparation for next April, because there's other communities that are in similar situations. If we were to have to evacuate or homeowners become displaced, I've been in communications with the Red Cross on what that looks like. Again, there's assistance there, but it's not designed for long-term solutions. So about the best that the Red Cross will be able to do would be a week or two. The County Emergency Management has shelters designated all across the county. Typically, they're in churches. Some of them are in some schools. But again, it's not necessarily a solution that homeowners are looking for. However, that's the Red Cross. That's what the Red Cross has to offer at this time. So we would request resources through the state to provide things like cots and blankets and things like that. But again, we don't have a plan for long-term evacuations and sheltering and things like that. So again, I just want to prepare the expectations. We did get a bit of good news this past week. One of the organizations that we use to provide sandbagging efforts is Community Thread. Many of you have probably heard of them. In the past, they have not assisted individuals with sandbagging efforts and protective measures for their houses. They have now changed that policy due to the threat that they believe is imminent for next spring and the number of requests they anticipate for individuals. So moving forward, they're going to allow them to organize volunteers to assist private residents.
Can you say that name again, Doug?
Community Thread.
Community Thread.
Yep, they're based out of Stillwater.
Okay, Community Thread. So instead of just protecting public infrastructure, they
will organize volunteers to come and assist private residents.
Okay,
so
good.
They're working through their policy right now. If you go on their website, I don't believe they have the form ready. This is brand new as of Wednesday or Thursday last week. So they're developing the form right now with their attorney, and they'll look at the homeowner's insurance policy to make sure that volunteers would be covered in an event that something happened, and go through that legal process. But the good news is that with the demand that we expect, we're going to be able to help provide individual assistance for homeowners come next spring. So.
Okay. If you could talk just for a second, I've had some email conversations with some folks, and frankly, I'm starting to really, well, let me say this first. We are planning on keeping access at this point. The reason that we are doing this right now is it looks like we're going to keep access in the fall, we're going to be okay. We're planning for spring, is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get way out in front of this thing so that if spring turns out poorly, we're ready. And at least we have plans in there to do everything we can to keep access here. You've heard some scary things here, but for now I think everybody's going to be fine. It looks like the weather is cooperating. Obviously, I can't tell what the weather's going to be, but right now we're looking good. We're planning for the spring. That's why we're here having this discussion. I just want everyone to kind of firmly ensconce that. Now, Doug, your office sent out a very important packet of information the other day.
Yes, sir.
And it started, at the second page, is interesting, the benefits of flood insurance versus disaster assistance, and it even talks about some of the costs of an average flood insurance policy. Could you just give us an overview on that? Because I think that's key for folks to understand that they can be covered. Just because the water's high right now, there's no reason they can't be covered.
Certainly.
Can you talk about that?
Yep, certainly. So FEMA offers insurance subsidy through the National Flood Insurance Program, and you go through your own insurance company and tell them that you're looking for flood insurance. So for folks that do not live in a designated floodplain and they're in low to medium threat of flooding according to the floodplain map, a policy generally would cover about or cost about $500 to $535 per year for a 1-year policy. So it's a very easy to get. It's about a 10-minute phone call. Provide your address, your location, the elevation of your house if you have it, and there's just some basic questions that they'll inquire about. You pay with a credit card over the phone. Like I said, takes about 10 minutes. The caveat to this policy is that it takes 30 days to go into effect. So if one were to wait until February or March to, it looks like I should get that policy, the fighting chance that it could be too late by that time. So we're strongly encouraging folks to look into this now. Maybe buy your policy in January and you'll be covered through next fall. I also want to caution people, it's not a blanket coverage where no matter what happens, you're now going to be covered. You have to read the policy, and I'll provide an example. If you have this NFIP subsidized insurance, and let's say your septic system backs up and floods your basement, that particular policy is not going to cover your loss in that case. However, if your septic system backed up into your basement because of a flood, now it will cover that loss. So you have to, be careful, ask questions of your underwriter, but ultimately this is going to provide much more coverage than your average homeowner's policy is going to coverage in terms of floods. If you're in a floodplain, you're still eligible to get the flood insurance. In fact, I believe if you have a mortgage on your home, you're required to have it. So you can still have that flood insurance, or should have that flood insurance. Of course, it's going to be more expensive than those that are not in the designated floodplain. But we're pushing that message really hard, and we want as many folks as possible to get that insurance coverage.
Good. Sounds like a great Christmas present to buy for the family.
Absolutely.
Is what it sounds like. Mom and Dad don't get anything this year. They get a nice, shiny flood insurance program right in their mailbox.
Mr. Mayor, so we did send that packet out to 48 residents in the Sunnybrook neighborhood. So if there's somebody that didn't receive the packet or feels like they'd like to see the information that's in there and they don't have access to a neighbor or something like that, simply email me and I'll provide that information. I did bring about 6 or 7 extra copies of the packet with me tonight.
Great. And I'm not going to go all the way through it, but we had some other questions, and some people asked about septics and wells. And this packet is one of the most comprehensive things I've seen put together. It's got everything from disinfecting a well to building a good dike, a well-engineered dike, to handling and buying insurance programs, to well pumps. I mean, it's really comprehensive. I would suggest if you've got this in the mail, you go through it and you read the links in here, because it is very good. I'll be looking at it myself.
I believe at the bottom of the introduction letter is my email on there.
It is there.
So,
Yep.
so if you have questions, You know, as I mentioned, there's other stakeholders in there, experts in terms of the wells and the septic systems and things like that. Send me an email and I can direct you to those experts.
Sounds good. Tom?
Would you be okay with putting your information, with being that it might be flood season next year, on our website? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, it's fine. It's on, I believe my email is on the Sheriff's Office Emergency Management website.
We could put a link
so-
to get to you?
Absolutely.
Is that stuff on a link, or is that all compiled? And
That stuff was just sent out last Thursday, so as a packet, it's not in our website as a packet, but most of those links to those resources are on our website. Yep.
So it's, can we get that done? Okay, thanks. I think it'd be smart.
Yeah, let me jump back in here for a second. The 25-75 program you were talking about earlier, where someone would need to come in with the 25%, and then the 75% could be taken up through the federal or the state government?
That would be the federal.
That would be the federal government.
Yep.
We already know, and I'm talking to the residents in the back of the room, we already know that VBWD has purchased 2 homes, and the rumor is there's maybe a couple others going as well. There may be up to 4, I think, at this point. Well, you know, the reason that Mr. Berglund made very clear to say disasters go up the chain. They start locally, and then they go to the county, they go to the state, they go to the feds. What it's really doing is it's going up the tax chain. Who has more money? That's what's really happening there. It's going up the food chain, as it were, because if we can't handle it, we have to go to the county. County can't handle it, they go to the state, right? Well, the VBWD has already shown that they're willing to put some resources toward these homes because they're responsible for these floodwaters, correct? So this program seems like something that if I was going to talk to my local VBWD manager, or even the president, Ms. Lucas, you might want to bring this program up, because it's something that would, number one, save them money. They're not paying 100% of these housing prices anymore. They're paying 75, or they're paying 25%. That's a huge savings to the VBWD. I have not contacted them on them. This type of effort is much better as a grassroots effort from the residents up. That's who they're going to listen to. You pay the taxes to them. So that's a much better way to do that. I will also say that the key right now for residents is communication to these emergency managers. If the water starts to come up, they can't get to your house, the fire trucks can't get to your house, you're doing like Doug talked about a moment ago, maybe taking alternate forms of transportation, they've got to know this. They have to know this the day you start doing that as a family, so that they can get those emergency services out to you in the most efficient way possible. And flood insurance is key. If you don't have it, get it, please. We are going to keep, from our perspective, Mr. Berglund, we are going to pursue that, the set of recommendations from the county in terms of raising the roads. I can't promise that one of those is going to take place here shortly, but we're certainly kicking up our expertise chain, whether it be Mr. Riestek or whether it be Mr. Hanson at VBWD, so that this council has better engineering information and better costing information so that we know what can happen there. We're going to do everything we can to maintain access. That said, this is not something we control. This is force majeure, God's plan, what have you. We are not going to be able to control the weather in the spring. If we have good melt and not too much snow, we're going to be okay. If we have a lot of snow and a bad melt, my basement will be full like it was in 2017. And that is just the long and the short of it. There are certain things we are not going to be able to control. So planning ahead and reading how to build dikes and doing as much preparation as you can in terms of flood hardening your own home is key. I can't say it enough. Because we may not be able to be there. We may not be able to guarantee access. If the water gets high enough, there's nothing that can be done. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. I'm sorry to say it, but it really is. Anything else to add, Mr. Berglund, to this discussion?
Mr. Mayor, council members, no, not at this time. I just can take questions, or my email is available to the residents for further questions later.
Gentlemen?
No, thank you, sir.
No. Staff, any other questions? Brad, Jennifer? Nothing? Mr. Berglund, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm looking right back at you. Residents, do you have some questions? And we're going to go ahead and just open it up for a second if you have some questions of Mr. Berglund or the council.
You have to make a motion to?
No, we're not going to have a public hearing. We're just going to ask him up for a second. I don't care. We're going to let him ask a question. Come on up.
Certainly. Again, I'm Danielle Jeffrey. I'll sign in here.
Yeah. It's on a public hearing, Danielle. We're just,
Okay.
if you have questions that we can help you with, we want to help you with them.
Yeah, I think the biggest questions were, it certainly sounds like the most important part is that we need to be letting emergency management know as soon as we're not able to access our area. One thing I think that we had talked about earlier, I guess, was a question that this is for the city council. I think when I had reached out to you, I'd asked about maybe blocking our roads further. If maybe we potentially, I don't know if that's with the Kleins.
Those are, all of those options are under consideration.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I was talking about earlier.
Perfect. I guess my only other question, sorry, I took so many notes here. Excuse me. So my understanding, just from our communication, is that we would need to, once we had the watershed district had connected and said, yes, potentially you can raise the roads, you may have to widen them, certainly we would, as a neighborhood, I think, want to be able to access our roads, so that would be something that we would hopefully all agree on. But my understanding is then we would need to come to the city council in order to have that fully approved. Is that correct?
The council would have a discussion on that, and at that point, the council would discuss it fully and determine what course of action we're going to take, depending on those professionals and what they tell us at that point. The residents themselves would not come to the council. That would be something on our agenda we would take care of.
Okay. And then my only other question is, with regards to that report that you had gotten recently from the county, is that something that we are able to access as the public?
You are. In fact, I was running on a house and sent one to one of the residents down there, Mr. Sundberg, I believe his name was.
Brandon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brandon Sundberg, but we can certainly get that over to you. I've got it. I can send it to you if you want to shoot me an email.
That would be wonderful. Okay. I think that is the majority of our questions. I mean, certainly we are all looking at flood insurance I grew up with 2 insurance agents, so I have had many conversations, and I certainly understand that flood insurance is important, but there are limitations. Sometimes it will only cover if your house is flooded past the actual foundation of your house, not underneath, and it would then only cover the things in your basement, such as your washing machine and things like that. But certainly, I think for some of the other residents in the area, that is
anything
minimal
you can do
at best. Yeah, it's
anything
it's
you can
something.
do to minimize that
Right.
is what we all need to be doing, and
Thank
we're going to do what we can, but it depends on God.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go into our community calendar then. Who would like to read our community calendar? Mr. Dennis Kopp, you are leaving us.
Yes.
You are leaving us, Denny. I think you ought to read this with great emotion.
I knew that was coming. Yeah. The community calendar from November 5th through the 30th is as follows. The city office will be closed Monday, November 11th, in honor of Veterans Day. Mahtomedi Public Schools Board meeting is Thursday, the 14th, at the district office, 7 p.m. Stillwater Public Schools Board meeting is Thursday, the 14th as well, at Stillwater City Hall, also at 7 p.m. Washington County Commissioners meeting, Tuesday at the Government Center, 9 a.m. City office is closed Thursday and Friday, November 28th and 29th, for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Kopp.
And
Your
I
last
might as well
one.
move to adjourn this fine meeting.
You do have a second. Second to adjourn. Second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much, gentlemen.